Welcome to the podcast, Liv.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I am really excited. We just met, again, the beauty of podcasting, and I love your story. Can you tell us a little bit of backstory about like how you got here? Because I know it has a diagnosis involved too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's quite a long journey. So it kind of starts with when I was young. All my life, I have loved food so much. I'm such a foodie, and it's like a bit of a running joke in my family. And I wanted to be a chef when I was a kid, and that never happened because that is a very hard job. And I'm glad I didn't go down that route. But I always just loved food. But I wasn't really, I say I wanted to be a chef. I wasn't really like a great cook. I just had this idea that some people just know how to do that and some people don't. And I can make three dishes. Like I know so many people who kind of have that script. They're like, oh yeah, I can make this and that. A couple of things, but I don't really know how to make anything else. And I kind of had that attitude. And then a few years ago, probably 5 years ago now, I started feeling some pains in like my stomach. It kind of felt like I constantly had the best way to kind of describe the pain is like I kind of felt like I was constantly on fire. It was horrible. It was kind of like a mix of period cramps and some kind of inflammation. And I was like, oh God, what's wrong with me? You start getting to the point when for anyone who's struggled to get a diagnosis for something that's going on in their body, I think people can recognize this feeling of like, it's going to be something really serious and you start really freaking out. And that's kind of what happened for me because I went to the doctors a few times. They didn't really understand what was going on with me. And in the end, I just kind of marched into my doctor's office and I was like, I think I have ovarian cancer. I want, an ultrasound and like basically just kind of freaking out. So I got an ultrasound. Long story short, I had to have surgery for a small cyst, which turned out to be an absolute blessing because when they removed that, they realized that I had endometriosis. And endometriosis is just it's absolutely laughable that it takes so long to diagnose it because 1 in 10 women have it. And so many people go for years and years and years not understanding that that's what they have. Because for me, what happened when I was diagnosed with endometriosis, I had never heard the word before in my life. I had no idea what it meant. I was waking up after surgery, being told I had this word and then being like, okay, I guess I'm Googling it then to find out what it means. It's kind of sad because basically endometriosis is, I'm not going to go into like the whole medical thing because it gets a bit boring maybe, or some people are not comfortable with it, but basically it causes inflammation. And that's what I was feeling. It was inflammation in my body that kind of flares up. And it was kind of sad to be told that I had a chronic illness. Basically, you can't really cure it completely, and you're born with it. So it's just one of those things that's something I'm going to have for the rest of my life. So that was sad. But on the other hand, I was actually quite happy to have a diagnosis because what I had been feeling for about 2 years at that point when I got that diagnosis was there's something here connected with what I'm eating. And it's really hard. Like I couldn't really figure it out. But when I had certain things, I had so much pain. And then it went away again. And it was really hard to kind of explain to doctors what was going on. But I would have certain types of food and it would just instantly, it was in a second, I would just be in pain. And it's kind of a relief to be diagnosed with something. Because, well, first of all, it wasn't ovarian cancer, so I have to be grateful for that. But also just kind of having some answers because then I started looking into what other people who have endometriosis talk about. And they also said it feels like it's connected to food. The problem is there's very little research done about this. So all you have is really anecdotal evidence. You kind of have to go by the word of what other people are saying. But a lot of it resonated with me, not everything, but a lot of it. And it kind of steered me in the direction of like trying a few things, trying to cut some things from my diet, trying to have more of certain things, change how I prepared things. And in the end, I just kind of thought, because I would go to the shops, you know, and look at the labels of things to buy for dinner and stuff. And I would read the label and it's like, oh, it's got that thing that I'm trying not to have that. You know, this has soy in it, this has spices in it, this has, you know. And in the end, I just thought it's going to be easier if I just make this from scratch myself, because then I know exactly what I've put in it. And if I feel pain, then I can make it again and take this ingredient out. If I then don't feel pain, that is the clue. So then I will try and avoid this ingredient. And so it was basically just the process of elimination to kind of a completely practical thing of making all of my meals, keeping a food journal, writing down how I felt after every meal. It was quite tedious work, but when you do suffer with pain, you're willing to kind of go that extra mile to not feel that way. And in the end, I kind of started enjoying cooking. I was like, this is actually quite fun, and I can cook, because it turns out, funnily enough, it turns out that like anyone who tries to do something over and over again gets good at it. You know, it's funny that. So I, you know, did loads of cooking, and you know, it just made me really happy that I was feeling better. And in the process, I was kind of getting this new hobby that I was really loving, and I was saving money, and I was wasting almost no food, and like all these amazing benefits that came with it. And so I thought, well, this is just, it's ridiculous, the idea of going back to buying any kind of ready-made meal or doing any kind of shortcuts, because I'm just going to go back to feeling bad, and I'm going to go back to wasting food and wasting money. And that just seems like a no-brainer. And so this whole kind of roundabout way of dealing with this illness has made me feel better in my body than I probably ever did, even before I was having the pains, because now I'm learning all about how to feed myself, not just to avoid pain, but to feel more energized. I'm super curious to learn about the different, you know, nutritious values of food and vitamins and all that sort of stuff, and anti-inflammatory food. So it's just really led me down this path of loving food. And we are now here today where I've basically started a multi-channel, well, mainly blog to begin with, but now as a YouTube channel, a podcast as well, and an Instagram account called The From Scratch Body, which is, you know, why I'm talking to you. And yeah, basically it's just wanting to share that with the world, you know, that you don't have to be a professional chef. You don't have to be, you know, a trained dietitian. You don't have to be a doctor to be able to create really lovely, nutritious food that's going to make you feel better, even if you have an intolerance, an allergy, some kind of unnamed thing that makes you kind of feel a bit weird. You don't really know what it is. Anyone can do that for themselves. Like, I'm a singer-songwriter. That's my profession. And I'm doing this now because anyone can do it. You know, you can, and I think it's really individual. I think that every single person has different needs. And that's what the From Scratch Body is about. And that's probably the longest answer you've ever had to, to a question.
It's actually not. And I love your answer. I love that you have this From Scratch Body, because I think that there's this beautiful place that you found, like in between the, like, we're changing our body and we're just letting everything go. We're actually like focusing on the things that are important with food, not the industry standards of food. And I think it's so beautiful that you are creating this. And singer-songwriter, like, that's awesome. I just want to say that out loud. I'm like, I wish I had some sort of music talent at any part of my body, but it doesn't happen. So From Scratch, what was like your absolute, like, that moment that you're like, wow, okay, I found the things? Because I know you said you started eliminating things. So did you do some sort of like structured elimination, or did you just start playing and be your own science experiment?
I kind of just started playing, but I will say that I think it was quite intuitive as well. I think that deep down our bodies probably talk to us more than we listen to them most of the time. That sounds maybe a bit sort of wishy-washy, but I really do think that like there's a lot of information if you stop to think. And you've probably heard people talk about, maybe you've had it on your show, I don't know, but people talking about intuitive eating and stuff, and that's a whole big topic. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's strictly what I do, but I very much subscribe to that idea that if you just kind of allow yourself to listen to your body telling you what you want, then it's going to give you some good information. And some people are like, yeah, but I'm just going to want donuts every day. It's like, no, you're not if you allow yourself to have anything, because your body is not going to tell you that every single day. If you're missing something, or if it's not really reacting to something, if you really listen, I think it's going to give you some clues. So I think that I had already noticed a few meals that always kind of came up as problematic, and they were often spicy meals, sadly, because I love spicy food. I live in London, we have so much amazing Indian food and stuff like that, but it did kind of cause a bit of inflammation and pain. And so I had to not completely eliminate, but just be a bit more creative with herbs rather than spices. And kind of like when I started moving in the way of herbs, instead of the really kind of tough stuff, which is something that a lot of people react to, in different ways. So that was another clue that, this is kind of a well-known thing to aggravate people. And I think it was also anything that was kind of processed and that had preservatives in it. That was something that I found really quickly, that I would, if I had anything with cheese on it, sometimes just to save time, because I'm quite busy and traveling a lot, I would have like ready grated cheese in the fridge and stuff, and ready sliced bread and all that sort of stuff. And anything that's ready cut for you or grated for you, they have to put preservatives in to keep it looking and smelling fresh. And that's often stuff that's like not really meant to be in your body. And I noticed the second I started just buying, normal cheese and grating myself, doing those little jobs that actually don't really take that much time, but you just think that they're going to do, that really helped. Cutting down on sugar was, if I were to say one thing, that was like the ultimate change. Like now, I only use, I still eat, sweet things and stuff, but I just, whenever I make something, I make it with honey or maple syrup or something instead of just refined sugar. And I think that that's just been, it's changed my world completely. So I think, and these were kind of things that I kind of thought, it's probably going to be that, and the same with alcohol, sadly. I love a beer, I love a glass of wine, but I really have to minimize that. I don't drink beer at all anymore because it's one of the worst things. So I did kind of, to answer your question, I think I did kind of know, but then also sometimes I had to really go, okay, let's look at this meal that I just made. It has this in it has these things in it. And then sometimes also, if I was at a loss, if I was like, everything in this meal is good stuff, why am I reacting to it? Then I would use the wonderful resource that is the internet, and just kind of Google, like, do people react to peppers? Do people react to tomato? And then the answer is sometimes yes. And then maybe that is the thing. So it's kind of a combination of like listening to my body, and when I'm kind of out of answers, trying to learn some of the things that are true for other people,
Yeah. And I think the nightshades, I know for me, nightshades like eggplant, tomato, pepper are really hard for a lot of people. And that's one of the things that I think this conversation is bringing up, is like, we always think of just remove the processed food to get rid of the inflammation. But some of those whole foods that you're filling your diet with can be the sneaky culprit too.
Absolutely. That's so true. And I think this is one of the things that I'm the most passionate about, which is really important with the From Scratch Body, is that I hear so many people, I've listened to all these podcasts and watched all these people's interviews where they say, I started eating this diet, I did the paleo diet, or I did the, whatever. and it changed my life. And so I've written this book, which is called Change Your Life with So and So. And I'm just like, no, you changed your life with that, but it might not work for somebody else. Like, we are all different. Like you say, like an eggplant, that is not bad food, but for the wrong person, it is bad food. You know, no food is bad, but if you have a bad reaction to it, it's like my most obvious example of this is, you know, you can talk all day about how healthy and amazing nuts are, you know, which they are absolutely incredible to put in your food. But if someone is severely allergic to nuts, it doesn't matter how healthy they are, it's not going to be what you need. So I think there are all these different nuances of that, where you might not be hyper allergic to something, you might not even know that you're reacting to that thing. You have it every day, you know, you have milk every day and you're kind of fine, but not great. And then when you cut out milk, you feel amazing and you're like, oh, wow, okay. So it's just, I think, so individual. I think every single human on this planet is probably a little bit different in what we react to. And you know, there are examples of this, like different races react differently to lactose, for instance. Like, there are studies showing that. So why wouldn't it be the same that like different people who have grown up with different types of food will react differently to all sorts of stuff? And I think it's really important for everyone to go on their individual journey to find that out, because you can feel so great if you do. That's the thing.
So in the From Scratch Body, are you helping people through this journey?
So what I'm doing now at the moment is I share one podcast episode every week and one two blogs every week. So my podcast is one topic and one recipe. So I do actually do a recipe on my podcast where you can kind of cook along with me. And then I do the same on the blog. I do a topic and I do a recipe. And I'm basically just kind of exploring the stuff that I'm curious about. And I want to share with other people, you know, what I've learned. So though I'm very clear on the fact that I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that, I do very solid research, and I kind of try and give the most unbiased answer I can give, because the thing with nutrition and food is like quite a lot of different interests involved.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so yeah, that is sometimes the challenge. So to try and kind of just see what I can learn about a topic and how it, you know, how it has to do with me and my food, but also kind of suggesting how other people look at it. If you look at, you know, should you cut down on meat in your diet, or should you not? Should you go organic, or is it not important? That sort of stuff. And kind of just try and make it a bit more accessible, because there is a lot of information out there, but a lot of it you have to kind of decipher what it really means, and go and look at where the information is coming from. So I try and kind of condense that down, and then I'm kind of just sharing the recipes that I'm you know cooking up that work for me. But I always offer loads of different ways that you can vary it. So you can make it vegan, you can make it vegetarian, you can add meat if there's not in my recipe. And you can cut, you know, if I make something that has loads of nuts in it, for instance, you can find something else to substitute that. So I'm making, you know, all these recipes that are more like guidelines, just like ideas. And I really always encourage people to make it entirely their own, you know, be brave, make it your own. If you make something that was like, if you know started with my base recipe, but then you get an idea to change it completely, I want to see it, you know, because I don't want to just tell people what to do. I definitely want to be a community. I want the From Scratch Body to be a community where people can be like, okay, so I tried your cauliflower bolognese, but instead I put this in because I can't have tomato, you know. And if people change it completely, I'm thrilled. You know, I'm not wanting people to follow it step by step and not learn anything about their own cooking and their own ideas. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm creating this community where people can get involved and get some inspiration if they feel like they're not very good cooks, but also maybe find out that they are.
I think that's, and I think that like what you're sharing is like to really get in touch with like how that food is reacting to your body. And you,
Yes.
like you said, finding ways to modify things so that we can still all have tasty food, even if we have the laundry list of food allergies where the doctor calls you and says, I'm really sorry, Jen, to give you this information. You have, this is your list of food allergies. That would be my diagnosis. I've had that happen. I'm one of those
Right.
people that benefit, that got the benefit of being allergic to
Mm.
all the things. uh,
Great.
but it does make you aware, and I think that that's one thing that we forget is we always are so busy in our lives, like how quick can we prepare this food, and we don't
Mm.
think about the preservatives like you were talking about that we put in food for that quick fix. And I think it's really cool
Absolutely.
that you're helping people get in tune with their body.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. It's kind of similar to anything else that you do for your body. Like if you're doing yoga, for instance, and it's again, every body is so different. You might be really flexible in one direction but then not at all in another, and it's not going to be the same as the person that stood next to you, and you can't be pushing yourself to look like the person next to you, because that's not yoga, because you're meant to find what feels good in your body, and you can challenge yourself, but you shouldn't feel pain. And it's exactly the same. Any kind of workout, movement, anything you do, it doesn't matter if it works for somebody else if it's not working for you. And it's interesting that you're saying that you've had, the diagnosis of several allergies, because the story often is like, oh, do you know so and so, they have all these allergies, oh, poor them. But actually, like, I know people who have severe allergies, and actually they're a lot more aware of like what feels good in their body, because they have to be in tune with it. And a lot of people who think they can have anything don't actually know how good they could feel, because they're kind of just getting by. And I have conversations with people about this, like I was talking to my mum about acid reflux and that kind of thing when I was learning about that, and she said, I think maybe I have that, like, because she just hadn't thought about, she was so used to feeling that way that she hadn't even kind of thought about maybe she should cut out coffee and that sort of stuff. And I think a lot of people, maybe it's different generations and stuff, but people are just used to kind of not feeling their best, and I think it's a shame. And I think also, if you do have an illness, like a chronic illness and stuff, and the stuff that you can't have, I did an interview with an endometriosis organization, and they asked me a really good question, which was, people with endometriosis, they're often in so much pain and they're really drained from that pain, so they don't really want to be in the kitchen cooking stuff from scratch. So what do you say to them? And it's a really good question, because I don't want to make anyone feel like they're not accomplishing what they should, because you should be cooking from scratch. Like, it's not about like being a snob. It's just that what I said to them was, I understand the feeling, obviously, very much relate to it, but it's a cycle that you get into. You either get into a vicious cycle where you never make food, and not only do you feel your pain from your illness, but you also feel under-energized in general because you're not eating great stuff. And then you're just stuck in that cycle all the time. Or you can feel the best that you can feel despite your diagnosis, despite the stuff that you have going on, and then at least have the energy to cook maybe once a week. And if you do cook once a week, then make a massive batch, and then you can freeze it for those days where you are just wanting to lie on the sofa and you don't really want to move. So I think for anyone, is to try and kind of change into the most positive thing that you can. And I know it's easier to say that, but I really do think that you can get yourself on a really good track where you are, okay, I do have this problem, I do have this allergy or whatever it might be, but I do feel really great because of this thing that I did for myself,
So have people around you, like in your life, in your inner circle, reacted to these changes that you've made?
It's a funny one. I think I think people were really quite worried about me to begin with. When you kind of tell people that, oh, I've got this diagnosis and I'm trying not to eat certain things, people do start to tiptoe around you a little bit. And if they're having you over, they're like, oh, just checking if you can eat this and this and this. And it's like, so, you know, they mean so well and it's very lovely of them. And I've probably done that to other people myself in the past. But I I do kind of feel like there was a time where people saw me as, oh, she's the one with this chronic illness now, which is really frustrating. You don't want to be that person because you've never looked at yourself that way, so you don't want to be viewed in that way. But I think starting the From Scratch Body has kind of reminded people that I do take every situation and make the most of it. And I did actually have one friend. It was so funny, where maybe she made it happen, but I did share on social media when I had the diagnosis, because I was really down and I kind of just wanted to share it. I felt weird about not saying anything, and I got loads of lovely responses, and actually a lot of them were from people that I didn't know had any kind of chronic illness, telling me about their different illnesses and how diet has changed their lives. And again, different dietary changes for every single person, you know, so it wasn't a one trick kind of thing. But one person messaged me, and she knew me from quite a long way back, and she said, you know, sorry to hear about this, but knowing you, you'll probably find a way to find the perfect things to eat, and in a couple of years' time you'll probably have a cookbook out, you know. And that's pretty much the direction I'm going now. So she was spot on. So I think people are kind of reminded now that I do make the most of things, and I've turned it around completely, and people are very happy to see that. But I think there was a bit of worry in the beginning, just because there's very little knowledge about my condition, and I didn't know what it was when I got it, so I can't really expect other people to be knowing any more about it. So yeah, I think, you know, awareness about all these different chronic illnesses that people have that you can't see by looking at them, you know, it's really important that we understand those. And it's not just about, you know, oh, that person doesn't eat meat. Like there are so many other different layers to what people need in their lives.
So do you find it hard to go and eat out, or do you eat out ever?
Well, I mean, I did have quite a long time now that I didn't, which was not by choice, obviously. But I think now that we're kind of back to being able to go back to restaurants and stuff, this was one of the good things actually about the pandemic. I mean, it feels weird to say any good things, but it did give me some time while I was developing the From Scratch Body, to really just like cook every day, because I didn't have a choice, you know. Well, I could get a takeaway, but you know, I couldn't really go to a restaurant, and to really just hone my new craft in that way, and also be aware of like the choices that I make, because now that we do go back to restaurants, and I've been just a couple of times because the UK has been quite bad for the pandemic, and now we're opening up again. It has made me quite conscious about how to choose from the menu. And, you know, because especially when you're not at home, that's like the worst time to be feeling bad, you know, so you really do want to be careful. And it is quite problematic sometimes with restaurants, because they don't list all of the stuff that's in a dish. You know, they will say they will have like one line that's like really tempting and lovely about the dish, but it's like, does this have garlic in it? Oh yeah, pretty much everything has garlic in it. Oh, okay. You know, if you can't have that, for instance. And that's one of the things that I have to be careful with. So it is quite difficult, but also I do quite enjoy it. Like I do quite enjoy trying to pick out the thing that I think is going to make me feel better, and I'm coming at it from that kind of angle, instead of like, what is the most buttery, delicious, sugary thing, you know, on this menu. So it's kind of making me make these choices that make me feel really good for the rest of the day. And I don't feel like I'm missing out really, because when you get a lovely meal, then you really enjoy it, you know? So yeah, I think it might be a challenge at times. I think it will probably be a bigger challenge in terms of riders when I do festivals, when I do gigs, when I do, you know, I'm an actor as well. So when I'm back on set, if I do any acting jobs, I think that's probably going to be a bigger challenge, because it's often quite limited what you get offered, and it's just a table of things. And unless you've given them a heads up about what you can and can't eat, they might not have anything that's great for you. So in those cases, I'll probably have to bring a few things that I've made myself, but I don't really see that as a limitation anymore. I just kind of see it as like a fun challenge to try and make the most of every situation, really.
I love that you say that it's a challenge instead of like looking at it, you know, and like you've done with everything. It's like not this doom and gloom just because you have a chronic condition or an intolerance. It's like, oh, well, it's just something to work around. And I asked the question because I know a lot of us, when we get diagnoses, we're like, oh, right, we're going to have to cook all the time. What do we do when we go on vacation? What do we do when our friends want to go out and have a meal out? And it's not an end all. Like you can still do those things. So that's why I asked the question, is to make sure that our audience knows that like it's not an end all. Like you can still have a life.
Yeah,
I promise.
exactly. Yeah, you can absolutely have a life. Like I have an aunt who's celiac, and she would always have some like stuff with her. When I was a kid, you know, if there was like a family gathering or something, she would have some stuff just in case people had forgot to make something for her that was like gluten free. And I used to think that I was a bit sad, like, oh, she's got, you know, her own lunch and whatever. But actually, she's one of the healthiest people I know. Looking at it now, like I think she takes a lot of joy from that. And I think it's often other people, you know, who think like, oh God, they can't have, you know, a hamburger or whatever. And when you know how good you can feel in your body just from making the right choices, it never feels like a sacrifice. It doesn't feel like you are missing out on anything. You're just more aware, like you said with the allergies. You're just like, okay, I'm not going to have that because I'm going to feel horrible. But that sounds great, you know, and it's usually stuff that's really healthy as well, because, well, especially for me, you know, I'm lucky in the sense that the stuff that I'm reacting to, preservatives, processed food, you know, that sort of stuff, it's not really something anyone's meant to have. So it's just kind of, I see it now as my body being just hyper alert to stuff that shouldn't be in it anyway. And so, yeah, I just don't see it as a sacrifice. I just see it as a constant reminder to be really good to my body.
Oh, be really good to your body. I love that.
Yes.
So if someone were to walk away with just one thing from this interview, what would you want that like mic drop nugget to be?
Well, my motto is cook from scratch and your body will thank you. And I really think that that is the one thing that I can tell anyone, that as much as I don't think there is a fix, a one fix for all, I think it's very unique to everyone, as I said. I would say that I would be surprised to find someone who said that cooking their food from scratch made them worse. Because, you know, that's always going to be a really good thing. And I think the takeaway for me is just your body is trying to give you so much information, and you can feel better than you've ever done if you listen to that information every day. If you really tune into your body, it's got so much to tell you. So just listen to it, not just the taste in that very moment, but how do you feel after you've eaten it? The from scratch body is not about, you know, eat this and then you'll be this size. It's got nothing to do with the outside at all. It's all about the inside, how your body feels. And if you cook from scratch, your body will thank you, guaranteed. That's what I have to say that I hope people take away.
I absolutely love that. And I love it's all again about being in self and being aware of self
Yes.
and that reaction after, because we often forget that. And it doesn't always happen immediately, the reaction.
No, no, it can be just, why am I so tired? It can be something that you don't think is connected to food, and you kind of think, oh, but I slept fine, like why am I not? And all these different things, like it can be your mood, I'm feeling really down these days, and I don't know why. And food can affect your mood so much. It's absolutely crazy when you start learning about it. And I just wonder about all these different things that we might be suffering from through our lives that actually are directly connected to food, and nobody really ever teaches us about it as much as I think that we should learn about it.
Yeah, I think we learn the wrong things about food from day one.
Yes, agreed.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us the From Scratch Body way of living. I love it. I can't wait to be in your space. Where can people find you again if they want to connect?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's been so great to talk to you, and I really feel that you understand this. So it's so lovely to talk to someone who really gets it. So, yeah, you can find me at thefromscratchbody.com. You can find me on Instagram. I'm the From Scratch Body, all in one word. I'm youtube.com/the From Scratch Body as well. And my podcast is called The From Scratch Body. And you can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. So yeah, if you just Google The From Scratch Body, and you'll probably find it.
And I'll make sure to get all the information in the show notes too, because I think what you're doing and what you're bringing to light is what the world needs to change, and it can make a huge difference.
Thank you so much.